This is Freak Athlete's Nordic Hyper GHD, one of the most hyped home gym releases of the year, and for good reason. They've made a lot of claims with this thing, calling it 6 machines in one. It's a Nordic bench with progression levels, a back extension, full-size GHD, reverse hyper. You can do hip thrust, split squats, sit-ups, and the list goes on and on. Seriously. In a compact footprint that's easy to move, stores vertically, supports users 5 to 7 foot tall, all while being easy to use and adjust. Get the f out of here. I don't care if this was sent for free, and it was. You're getting the same brutally honest and thorough review no matter what. Longtime viewers know if you promise the world, I'm going to test you on every single one of your claims. So as always, I've made notes of every movement I've tried on this, which is everything Freak Athletes advertised and more. And no, I can't share them with you because you'll notice I didn't say I always write appropriate notes, but we'll talk about how this thing performs for each exercise, whether good or bad, because I don't think it replicates all 6 machines well, but I do think the Nordic Hyper is a versatile piece that can save a lot of space and money, making it very tempting for a lot of home gym owners. As we go, I'll also try to answer the questions you had about this when Winnie talked about it on our Patreon and answer your Instagram questions while making some comparisons along the way. If you decide you enjoy this review and want to support our small family-run channel, I've linked the Nordic Hyper GHD down below next to our other affiliates. If you purchase something using one of those links, then the company will send us a small commission at no cost to you, but I'll do you one better. Code Gluck takes another $50 off the price of the Nordic Hyper GHD, but if you're just here for some entertainment, we still love and appreciate you, so hit that like button and give me some kind of comment to boost my ego. All right, let's start this one off where you'll start if you buy this, and that's with assembly. The Nordic Hyper comes in one big box that weighs about 100 pounds, so you may have to bear hug this thing into place, or I don't know, maybe actually ask somebody for help. If you're looking at this thing saying, I'm not putting that thing together, it's actually a lot easier than it looks, which is the same thing I'll say about adjusting and using it, but we'll get to that next. This center section is already together. You're really just putting on the feet, foot plate, pad, rollers, and a few other little things. It took me about half an hour, which was helped by the fact that the hardware is sorted and labeled, which is rarer than it really should be. The instructions are decent, if not a little small, so if you're blind like me, you'll probably do a lot of squinting, but they do have an assembly video you can follow as well. The packaging is what I'd call good, not great. It's minimalist, but at the same time, someone clearly took a lot of time to figure out how to keep things from banging together and getting damaged, but I wouldn't be surprised if you found a scuff or two on yours. All right, what about actually using and adjusting this thing? I won't say it's always super quick and that it won't take a little bit of work to find out exactly what position works for you at first. There's definitely a bit of a learning curve, which is a nice way of saying I might have had a few accidents along the way. And sure, I found myself grabbing the wrong knob more than a few times, but that's to be expected with how much can be done with it. Once you're used to it, for the most part, it's surprisingly quick and simple. Now, I know a few of you are looking at this thinking, there's no way this idiot's gonna convince me that that thing's simple, but that's what I originally thought as well, except, well, I didn't actually call myself an idiot. To adjust it, you've got a series of pop pins. Really, there's 3 main ones, but there's a couple little other things like this magnetized post here that I can drop down for certain angles. And then I've got a pop pin in the front and the back, so when it's fully lowered, it locks it into position. And then I can just pop that back out and use this pop pin to raise it up or down. And then I can do the same thing in the front, locking it into really a ton of angles, giving me a lot of possibilities. And if that's not enough for you, they've got a little knob down here that I can loosen if I want to remove this pad, if I'm doing back extensions or whatever else, but it is a bit tricky to reach these two knobs when this pad is on here. And then there's a leg roller that all right, so there is a leg roller that goes in the back, but it can also lock in the front there on that collapsible post, allowing for even more possibilities. Again, though, it's a little tight reaching around the back side to adjust which hole this is in, but if the pin were on the other side, it would get in the way of your head during certain movements. You thought I was done, right? Nope. Don't forget the removable GHD pad, which Velcros on, and it can be attached anywhere along this flat pad if you want to use it for support for your legs on something like decline sit-ups. This pop pin allows the top piece to telescope in and out so you can compensate for the heights of different people and make adjustments for various exercises. They've even got this little removable pad for your man bits to make things a little more comfortable, and it has Velcro on one side so you can attach it to the flat pad, making for one less thing to keep track of, which is a nice touch. And the insane part of this is they've worked in even more features into this thing. These guys spent a long time trying to make this thing work for as many things as possible. You've got 4 band pegs up front so you can utilize resistance bands. There's weight horns up front and in the back. So if you're a big, strong, super attractive and well-spoken athlete, unlike myself, and you're training something like explosive GHD sit-ups, you can add some weight to keep it from moving. The adjustability and versatility is friggin' nuts, but that doesn't mean I love everything about it. So let's talk about what it does well and where it comes up short as I walk you through the 6 machines and various movements you're supposed to be able to emulate with this. And since we're already talking about adjustments, let's start there. Right now, you can see this moves around and jiggles a good amount, and that's because after it's set up, you have to tighten down the 3 main pop pins to stabilize it. It's not a safety thing because the pins pop and lock into place. It's just more stable with them tight. I don't even mind doing it. It's just a little bit tedious at times. The thing you have to realize with a machine like this that does so much is that everything is a balancing act. And I think they've done a pretty good job of finding a sweet spot between stability, cost, weight, and build quality. Yes, even when the 3 pins are tightened down, there's some wobble, but I never feel unsafe using this, even when cranking it up unnecessarily high to test lateral stability without any plates anchoring it. Believe me, you're not gonna flip this thing over. I tried. If they made it from 3x3 11 gauge steel like a high-end power rack, it would weigh an absurd amount and be awful to adjust and move around. This right now is super easy to pick up and roll it to wherever you want, and it stores vertically, which is great because the Nordic Hyper GHG's biggest strength is its space savings. Stored upright, it takes less than 2 feet by 2 feet, and laid out, it's just over 4.5 feet long, though you do need a little bit of additional space to use it. So let me show you, but it's not actually set up for me to do anything with it quite yet, so I'm just going to throw a B-roll of my wife up here to distract you while I set it up. Oh wow, look at her go. Great job, honey. All right, so I set it up for back extensions, and this is an exercise that's really important to me because a while back I was having back issues where if I was playing on the floor with my son and I'd go to get up, I'd have to kind of hobble forward and slowly extend my back until I could get fully upright. And I built all of this because of an unhealthy obsession with gym equipment and to keep up with my kids. And that machine back there, the Bells of Steel reverse hammer, is where I give a lot of credit for not having that problem anymore. I did a lot of back extensions, reverse hypers, and other movements that this machine does as well. All right, so getting up here is pretty easy. They've given you a foot peg and a set of handles to kind of help you get into position. And then once you're there you go, a 90-degree back extension. But as you can see, I'm about 6 foot tall. So your first time down, you might get a little scared that your face might not look quite the same on the way back up. So this is the first time I'm gonna call that 5 to 7 foot height thing into question. Now you can add the GHD pad if you need a few more inches, but it's just not quite as comfortable. It does work though. I've tried several variations of back extensions, and of course the best thing about this machine is the levels of progression. So I can incline it to 45 degrees, and now I really could be 7 foot tall and in the NBA if my mom had loved me enough to marry a taller man. There's an argument to be made for incline extensions being the better of the two, but I made a review channel so I didn't have to deal with the lift bros who have nothing better to do but to bully people online, but it didn't work. Overall though, this does back extensions pretty well. Where it performs great is with Nordics, which makes sense. It is the basis of the machine, but I'll give credit where it's due. You've got 10 levels of progression from 45 degrees to flat, meaning this can work for all ability levels, and even 3 levels of decline Nordics if you're an absolute monster, but I'm calling them out a bit at the negative 15 degrees. Not because I can't do them or because I look like a fish out of water trying, but because I don't enjoy my face that close to the floor. But I'm sure with all these adjustments, you could probably just adjust it and raise it up a little bit higher. Nordics are very comfortable even when your knees are digging into that pad, and that's because the vinyl and padding is well done and durable. And I'd say the same thing about the various rollers. These are a better quality than you'd find on a lot of home gym stuff. Put them up against Reps rollers in the Blackwing, Iron Masters Super Bench Pro, even the Bell's reverse hammer. These are a much better quality. They're beefier and using a much better vinyl, and I feel locked in and safe when using this. Let's talk about a few more exercises it does well with, and then get into the ones that aren't quite as good, and even one of the main movements where it just doesn't work. GHD sit-ups are great regardless of variation or angle, and I'd echo that same thing on decline sit-ups. Just like with other exercises, you can adjust things, move the GHD pad to give you leg support, change the angle, whatever works for you. Sure, I might have hit my head a few times going a little crazy experimenting, but that's more on me than them. Freak Athlete's machine actually surprised me on how well it worked for certain movements. For example, I would have thought that since there's a little bit of play in the leg roller when you install it on that collapsible front post, I would have thought that would be an issue for something like Bulgarian split squats, but it worked as well for those as anything could on the world's most miserable exercise. And I'd say the same thing for hip thrusts. I thought the knob in the front would dig into my back or the roller wouldn't be stable enough, but I looked as cute as ever as I did 405 pounds for sets. Yeah, I was probably getting close to maxing the padding on the roller because the pressure on my back was becoming noticeable, but I really didn't think it would work at all. Decline leg lifts and knee raises were also good, but they're another example of where height may become a problem. For me, my head has to be pretty close to the leg rollers and my butt is right on the edge of the pad. GHRs and reverse hammers are where things get a little more interesting. Glute ham raises are a good example of it works, but it's not going to compete with a good dedicated machine. But I could say that same exact thing about my Bells of Steel reverse hammer or any combo style machine. You have to sacrifice a little to get something that can do this much, especially at this price. The pad velcros on well, but it can move a little during the movement, and it's not as large or as comfortable as an actual GHD pad. That being said, I find it functional, and I love having multiple angles to work with because GHRs are not an easy exercise. Reverse hypers though, I'm sorry, I'm calling them out. Listen, if you want to help me out in the algorithm by arguing in the comments that it's passable, go for it. And I give them credit for trying to fit one more thing in here, but to me, this is not a good reverse hyper. I can't get close to a full range of motion when it's flat, neither can Winnie, and even with the GHD pad, which props you up some, it's not comfortable on your hips and stomach, and I'm still not able to emulate the full movement. Now, you could of course angle it some to allow your legs a little more space to swing, but there's no spinal decompression, no stretch, and I'm not able to get much tension throughout the movement, even with bands, which are a lot of fun to try to get on your legs while you get into position. I'm sorry, I just don't think this is an effective reverse hyper. So that's the 6 machines Freak Athlete is attempting to recreate within this, though it can actually do more than that. QL raises work well, though it can be a little uncomfortable on your center section. I tried couch stretches, Copenhagen's, and even worked on my flexibility in the bedroom with reverse Nordics. Those and most other movements work very well, and this is a seriously versatile space saver that does most movements much better than I'd have thought. And I think you're getting a lot for your money at just under $850 shipped, with code Gluck taking that extra $50 off. The build quality is pretty good for an imported piece at this price. The padding and vinyl is better than expected. Sure, the angle markings could be laser cut out or painted or something because they can be a little bit hard to see on this post and here, but unless I really nitpicked, overall I'd say I'm pretty happy with what they've been able to do with this. And with a 500-pound weight capacity, you can really push what you can do with it. Heck, they even did some static tests at 1,250 pounds. Is it going to do everything well? No, but I think this is a really good machine, and they've worked hard to maximize its versatility, like adding the GHD pad just before the final release. And I think this is something that a lot of people are going to really like having in their home gyms. Thanks to our patrons, links in the description. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next week.